Hello and welcome to this briefing by the Jerusalem Press Club. I'm Jonathan Beck. Our topic today is mainly the front in Lebanon and also the ceasefire with Iran, but we'll also discuss a few of the other issues that are on the news cycle. First of all, welcome to our guest, Dr. Eyal Hulata.
Hello.
Hi, Eyal. Hello.
Good to see you all.
So, Eyal has been Dr. Hulata has been our guest for a while now, but just briefly for those who don't know, he is a senior international fellow at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies, the FDD, and he was the first foreign visiting fellow there. From July 2021 to January 2023, he was Israel's national security advisor and head of the Israeli NSC, the National Security Council. He served under Prime Ministers Naftali Bennett and Yair Lapid, who incidentally also joined forces recently in Israeli politics. Before that, he was a chief product officer at an Israeli financial technology company called Pagaya, and he was also active in climate tech. Eyal Hulata is a physicist. He has a PhD in physics from Tel Aviv University and a master's degree in public administration from the Harvard Kennedy School. So, in paraphrase of the good, the bad, and the ugly, we're going to talk today about the good, the bad, and the stupid. And I'll start with stupid. The flotilla, the Somod flotilla, the Arabic word for clinging. What Israeli commandos who boarded those ships about 1,000 kilometers from the Israeli coast found was narcotics and prophylactics, according to the videos we saw. I think Israel has learned from past experience. Do you have anything to say about this?
Well, I wouldn't want to give a grades to the character of the participants. I'm not in that position. I think that first, this hype and attempt to at all costs try to prove that what Israel is doing in Gaza is completely opposing to those norms. I think by this time it's a bit absurd. The humanitarian situation in Gaza is taken care of, by the way, by the CMCC in Kiryat Gat. There's so many other things that are happening. There is no fighting. We're in a ceasefire. There's a 20-point plan to be implemented, and still there are people who would rather spend weeks, literally, on sea all across the Mediterranean to get there. That's their position. Israel shouldn't allow this. The fact that we responded early, I think, signifies the learning curve that we have. One night, very quiet. I think about 170 of them have been detained and the ships have been diverted. And I hope that that's the last that we hear about this, and that I won't need to be asked to respond to such things again. I hope.
Yes.
I'm not sure. They might try again, but yeah, we need to be busy on serious stuff.
Yeah, just to mention that, ironically, what you just said is in agreement with what, what's her, I don't remember the first name, but Francesca Albanese said that what they're doing is performance art. Oddly, I need to add also that recently, about an hour, 2 hours ago, the Italian Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni, actually, put her foot down on all the Italians being released from the boat. So it's still an ongoing story in a sense, but really it's a bit too silly for us to continue fussing about. Now let's move to, we have the good and the bad. So again, we're going to start with the good, I think, or at least the significant, which is the United Arab Emirates deciding to leave OPEC. Can you say what this means, and also with respect to Israel?
Well, we'll need to see exactly what that means. I mean, OPEC has been for decades the construct that coordinates all of the export, both quantities and prices all across the world. I mean, this was not just Middle East export. It was global. The fact that the UAE are leaving OPEC and OPEC Plus, which is the new arrangement that was agreed upon a few years ago, says something about the fractures also within the Gulf in this sense, and the need to find ways to be more flexible, perhaps with dealing with the constraints that the closing of the Strait of Hormuz have imposed, and other things. I'm not fully in understanding how this will play out. We'll need to follow up. It was starting to look as if the UAE and Saudi Arabia were finding better terms in their engagement after a long period of hostilities that have become quite disturbing. I think for them as well, but from our perspective, uh, definitely. I would want to say that it's better to have a stable Gulf and a unified position by the pragmatic countries in this, but it's for them to decide how to manage their, in this case, rivalry. Maybe it's not as much as rivalry. Maybe it's more disagreements on how to deal with this. But breaking, it's a big deal. I mean, this is a potential a big decision made by Abu Dhabi, and we'll definitely be following this. Now, this does not have a direct implication on Israel. I mean, there is no secret at this point. Israel and the United Arab Emirates have come much closer. It definitely in the last few years, but specifically during the last epic fury since it started, and there was a lot going on that was not disclosed, and I think the Emiratis would rather that less will be disclosed, but some things do come out. There were reportings about Israeli presence in Abu Dhabi and air defense systems, and of course, the audience should expect that there's been much more. I'm not going to give away any classified details on this, but the level of cooperation is significant. That is very good. I think that's important. I think it's an important message, not only to the Gulf but also to the Iranians. There is an alliance here, and it's holding. And this, I want to focus on this. My hope is that we can expand and enlarge the network of normalization, and there will be terms also to come closer to the Saudis. There are many joint interests also with the Saudis. This does not need to come at the expense of the relationship with the Emiratis. But for now, we'll make the best out of what we have.
Okay, thank you very much for this. We actually have a question from a journalist about the flotilla. We'll circle back to this at the end. The main topic of our briefing today is what the IDF is doing in southern Lebanon, or maybe not doing, and Iran. Recently, IDF soldiers in southern Lebanon have come under the fire of fiber-optic drones. Now, just to explain to the journalists what this means is they just take a drone, maybe even made by DJI or some non-military drone, and they attach optic fiber to it on a spool. It's almost like a spider on a web. I think these are completely immune to jamming, right?
Well, I wouldn't say that they're completely immune to jamming, but they're definitely immune to the kind of jamming that Israel's been using so far, which was basically to block communications and reception to GPS and other global positioning networks. So it is more immune for sure. The signature is way less, harder to detect, and more difficult to destruct. But this has been in the works for a long while. I mean, there has been drones of this sort in Ukraine for years, and this does not come to a surprise to the IDF. Unfortunately, we've not prepared well. I have to admit, Israel has not invested, I guess, enough resources to have a solution in time. I don't know how much longer it will take. What we're seeing now, the force is improvising. I mean, this is Israel, so we can improvise to solutions all the time. So we will see more and more, I think, nets surrounding buildings and vehicles and soldiers while at rest, because those drones cannot penetrate through nets, and if they're distant enough, even if they detonate, it's far enough to secure the soldiers. So we will see more of those kind of issues, but I would also believe that we will see a ramping up and speeding up of technological solutions to it, both to detect and then to find ways to take it down. It's not an impossible mission. We've done more sophisticated and complicated things. I will say if we can intercept a ballistic missiles from a range of 16,000 kilometers, then we can shoot down a drone. that we can detect from a distance. Again, unfortunately, this is not there in time, and there are casualties because of that, which makes it even more frustrating and painful. But I would expect that we will start seeing deployment of solutions soon.
Would you say, though, perhaps, I mean, there are casualties and there are people wounded, and with various degrees of severity, but would it be accurate to say, potentially without emotion, that these drones are more of a psychological weapon than a strategic weapon, in the sense that they're quite small, they're quite light, they cannot really carry a lot of dynamite or explosive material, and the damage they can create is quite limited. I mean,
Well, Jonathan,
in some gap from how they're perceived by the Israeli public
look,
and the Israeli media.
I will not undermine what this is doing. This is not strategic, but neither are anti-tank missiles or mortar shells. Many things that we've been using were not strategic, but they're lethal. And once they're lethal, we need a solution to them because we have deployed soldiers there. And by the way, these drones, if we will not find a good solution to them, we will find them crossing the border and entering into civilian population and houses. And then what will we say? This is not about the strategic nature of this, or I will say the magnitude of the threat is not by the complexity of it, but rather by the damage that it can solve. Once we find a solution to it, then we can say that this is minimized. At this point, it is asymmetric, and the IDF needs to work very, very hard with the industry and other elements to it to find a solution to it, because otherwise our soldiers are exposed and our civilians could be exposed. And this is unacceptable. We cannot stay in such a solution. And I will say specifically when unfortunately the IDF cannot respond, even though Hezbollah is, of course, violating the ceasefire. That is needless to say. That would be true even if there were no casualties. But definitely when there are casualties. And we're now in a position where the IDF cannot respond. And the IDF cannot solve this problem with other means, such as punishment and deterrence. We cannot do this because, so it seems, the IDF hands are tied behind the back. This is a different problem than not having a solutions to it. And I will say we need a solution to it. But while we're at it, and while we're waiting for that to happen, this is a policy question that the Israeli government must attend. The IDF soldiers cannot be undefended and without the possibility not only to defend themselves, but also to retaliate. This position is completely unprecedented, I think. Definitely in the last 2.5 years, that is not a good situation, and it must end. We cannot stay like this. This cannot be the situation that the soldiers are in.
Okay, I mean, that's a good segue to the next question I wanted to ask you about Iran. But before that, just a last question, a technical issue about the drones. Um, a simple solution, like it really sounds silly, but it's actually something that could work, like an Israeli drone with scissors that could cut the fiber. Do you know specifically from a technological perspective, these drones have a backup radio system, or once you cut the wire, they're kind of,
I
they're
don't
kind
know.
of
They could, they couldn't. It depends. Cutting a fiber optic in air is not something that is so simply done. The fiber, it's not like a tense wire that you can see. There are other things that could or should be done and taking them down. I don't want to get too technical into this, but uh, it's we'll figure it out. We have to soon, quickly.
okay. A note to our journalists: if you Google optic fiber drones in the Ukraine, you'll see that those things leave a lot of crap in their wake, in the sense of, like, ecological waste that birds get cut on, and etc. It's like, I mean, all that spool is just lying around there, and it's essentially a string made of glass.
That's true. I don't think Hezbollah cares about the birds so much, but it's true.
Okay, now you were mentioning the fact that the IDF cannot respond, so obviously this takes us to why it can't respond, and the reason is diplomatic, of course. It's the ceasefire with Iran, and I would say maybe the last 24 or so hours, we've seen more kind of, belligerent tweets from Trump on Truth Social. Um, but what's the actual situation? I mean, I'm not even sure how many days into the tense ceasefire, and whether the siege of the Straits of Hormuz is working or not, it really depends on who you're asking. So, where do you think this goes?
Well, I can give my take on it. Um, I don't see intelligence, so my analysis is based on broader understanding, and I think definitely, at least on the American side, um, it is not I think too difficult to understand where it stands. And let's start with that. President Trump announced a ceasefire. Uh, it's not a surprise. It was clear that it will happen. There shouldn't be a surprise that Lebanon is also part of that ceasefire. This was said almost from the start. So, the fact that it seems like the Israeli government would prefer to this to look like a surprise. That also is not a surprise. But in any case, it was clear that once there is a ceasefire, this will be across all fronts because you cannot negotiate under fire and allow so many opportunities for spoilers to ruin it. But the negotiations are not moving ahead as expected. I think what we hear President Trump doing or saying first in writing is an appreciation that economic pressure is actually doing not only damaging Iran, but could, and I think the president will wait to see if that materializes, change the calculus of the Iranians. Now, how much longer can Iran sustain this blockade when probably soon they will run out of storage room for oil and they might need to shut down wells and other things that could happen. Definitely no revenue and income and no access to funding. This is not just about the blockade of Hormuz. This is also about the I think more active participation of Gulf countries in sanction enforcement. And there are many things that various countries have done before to allow Iran to funnel money and to divert sanctions, to use gold and other money laundering mechanism and exchanges and so forth. And it seems that more and more countries have stopped doing this or definitely minimizing the quantities. This puts Iran in a much more difficult economic situation than they were before the war. Now, how much longer can they wait? Uh, that is a debate, and I'm sure that even those who can see intel will say that they actually don't know because it depends on who you ask in Iran. And the generals might think something, and Kalibaf might think something else. President Pezeshkian definitely thinks something that is very, very different. And at the end of the day, the question is who call the shots now in Iran? More and more, it seems like it's the generals of the IRGC. And in a point in time, they might also start questioning whether or not they have the ability to pay salaries to the officers and to the soldiers and to the besieged people on the streets, and that might change the calculus. I think President Trump is waiting for that. And until that happens, as long as there is progress towards that end and he has the time, I'm not sure he has the appetite to go back into fighting because this can get things out of hand and escalate. And it's probably likely that he would want to wait for the Iranians to violate the ceasefire before he responds. And I'm sure that they are the reporting on preparations on behalf of CENTCOM for a new wave of more surgical or strategic attacks. I'm sure it's true because CENTCOM are also not waiting in vain. So I think all of the options are being prepared. The things I at least am puzzled about, President Trump is expected to visit China and Beijing in about 2 weeks. And I have to say, it will come to me as a surprise if something erupts in the Middle East before that visit and things can get out of hand in ways that could damage that visit. That would surprise me. So if I need to guess, I would assume that at least until the end of that visit, it's likely that there will be focus and appetite on sustaining the ceasefire and not breaking it, unless, of course, the Iranians decide to violate, and then things look different. But I'm not sure in what I said. My crystal ball is broken. President Trump likes surprises. I could be completely wrong, but we'll wait and see.
Two questions that arise. A, I don't know how feasible it is. I mean, I've read that the UAE is producing 30% below capacity. So I don't know how long it takes them to reach that capacity. But first of all, does this take the sting off, like the pressure that Iran puts on the global market? And the second thing is actually more related to the United States. I know there's a law that between 60 and 90 days he needs to ask for permission from Congress. Incidentally, today is day 60 since the beginning of the operation. And do you think this is a constraint from his side? Is there any chance of the Senate, not giving him full
Yeah.
carte blanche?
Well, good question. I'm not sure I can answer that in full. I'm not sure, but maybe I'm wrong, that we heard challenges coming from Congress on this. So, I don't want to give a speculation that is unsubstantive. So, unfortunately, I need to pass that question. I don't know the answer to.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for that. Anyway. Um, okay. Question from journalist. I don't know if you feel free to say that you don't want to answer because it's slightly political. Supposing that Naftali Bennett and Lapid win the election in October, do you think they're gonna? I'm going back here to Lebanon and Gaza, etc. Are they gonna deploy different policies in Gaza, the West Bank, Lebanon, all the fronts, etc.? Essentially, like the entire defense posture. Are they going to act significantly differently from Netanyahu?
I'm not sure I can answer on their behalf on this. I'm not speaking on their behalf, and it's difficult to know what will be the circumstances. I mean, if the elections are indeed in October, November, until the government is formed, we're talking about 10 months from now. What will be the situation 10 months from now is a question in itself. So I'm not sure I'm qualified to answer what they will do. I can say, I mean, not only me, others, there are different viewpoints on how to deal with this issue and how to work this around. And I would expect that even if they don't win the elections, and Netanyahu remains prime minister, but the composition of the government is different, that he will deploy other policies. And I would expect Washington to expect any Israeli government to deploy different policies. The Americans will want to go back to the 20-point plan. And having said that, I'm not sure that they can wait until there is a new government in Israel. I would assume that once the dust settles a little bit longer, we're going to see emphasis, an American emphasis on Israel, on this government, if that's the government at that point, to go ahead with a 20-point plan. This in itself will call for slightly different policies on behalf of Israel. So I will say generally, without getting into the politics aspect of it, that there will be different policies in the future anyway. What exactly will a new prime minister do? Who will that prime minister be? What will be his constraints and how will he act? I cannot answer that question at this point.
Okay, so going back to the 20-point plan, though, I mean, as of today at least, it's not Israel that's not letting it progress. It's Hamas. I was going to say, I mean, the U.S. is busy elsewhere, but in fact, Hamas is now violating what the U.S. wants. Do you care perhaps to say anything about, Israel has this new policy of essentially creating a security buffer all around it, the yellow line, it's been called, also in Syria, also in Lebanon. Would you say that Lebanon and Gaza highlight what one could call, the benefits of such a plan when Israel has freedom to act? I'll do it in question form. Would you say that in Lebanon it's not a benefit, but actually a sort of hindrance having all those soldiers inside the territory while diplomacy prevents them from responding?
Well, Jonathan, it seems you think it's a liability.
I mean, do you think Israel should, considering the situation, how
Look,
diplomatic, should
I
Israel wind down in
completely
Lebanon?
right. So having such a buffer zone is a solution, um, uh, assuming that the objective that was given by the government calls for that solution. So let's start with Gaza first. Clearly, the Israeli government policy was and is to hold territory, also as a part of a security strategy, but also a punitive strategy in Hamas. And the government and the ministers are not shy of saying this, that grabbing land and holding it has also a punitive aspect to it. The 20-point plan stipulates that over time, of course, Hamas needs to disarm and to commit to withdraw its participation in power in Gaza, but over time, that this buffer zone, this perimeter, will diminish, and this yellow line will grow closer. Even at the end of the 20-point plan, Israel is to hold a perimeter inside the Gaza Strip and in Rafah crossing and so forth. So there is this element to prevent the ability of any, I will say, radical extremists in Gaza to get close to the fence and close to our civilians, and also to smuggle arms coming from Sinai through Rafah in any way of sort. That would be, I think, in any Israeli government, an objective to make sure that there is security, but also a feeling and sense of security on the population, and that there are proper means to prevent Hamas or any other extreme organization to recuperate and rebuild their arsenal. This will be imperative, I will say, in Gaza in the foreseeable future. Lebanon is a different story because we cannot control all of the intakes into Lebanon. So the purpose of that buffer zone is defensive, not necessarily to prevent Hezbollah from recuperating, I would say, at large. It prevents them from coming close to the border. And now there will be questions that some of them have to do with the ability to have force protection, because if our presence there makes the idea of soldiers targets, as it was in the last time we had a buffer zone or security zone in Lebanon in the late 80s and throughout the 90s, then this might develop to be a problem. It was a problem back then. It ended in the year 2000 in the full withdrawal from the security zone from Lebanon, which I'm sure the journalists remember. And now, as it comes to Lebanon, there are a few options. Either the negotiation, the political negotiation, or diplomatic negotiation materializes, and Israel and Lebanon reach agreements by which I would assume that the Lebanese will demand that Israel withdraws at least from portions of this security buffer. And Israel, of course, will do this in exchange of proper security measures. And that's the happy flow. Of course, the question is what happens if it does not materialize? There is no ability to reach such an agreement, and there is no foreseeable solution of pushing back against Hezbollah to their disarmament or to their verified agreement not to come closer to the border. Then what? Do we stay there for indefinitely? That would be a policy question. I don't know exactly how this government will treat it. I don't know what's the American position on this. But this will be something that we'll deal with. And this will be more, I think, complicated than in Gaza. So we'll need to see how this works. What I will say is that if the government of Israel position is that we stay there to ensure that Hezbollah does not come closer to the border, then we will need proper means to protect our forces. And we will need proper means to make sure that this buffer zone is not penetrable so that we protect the civilians. And both of these will need to take place. And we will also need to address the question of the more longer range weapons that are outside of this buffer zone, because I would expect that there will be a limit to how much north we will go. Not to Beirut and definitely not to the Bekaa. So there will need to be a more comprehensive, broad solution in case there is no agreement, which means that Hezbollah is still there fighting and we need to defend and protect. We shouldn't be dragged into quagmire of a security zone just because we started this without a proper defensive strategy into how to deal with it. Otherwise, it might unfortunately end like in year 2000. That will not be good.
Okay, but would you say, I mean, today in Gaza we have the militias, which are maybe, less organized than the Southern Lebanon army of years past, but there's no plan in Lebanon to establish any sort of Israel-friendly militia or paramilitary force.
Well, Jonathan, to be fair, also in Gaza, those militias are not playing a significant role in defending our forces. It's the IDF that is defending. The difference, I think, between Gaza and Lebanon is that Hamas is much weaker than Hezbollah. And Hamas's ability to effectively target soldiers, they try from time to time, but it's intercepted more often. I guess it's more difficult for them to smuggle the means into Gaza to create those explosive drones controlled by fiber optics. And I hope I'm not wrong on this. God forbid tomorrow we start seeing them. That would be very problematic. But at least so far, we haven't seen these kind of means in Gaza. And I would assume that it's more difficult for Hamas to do so. There is a difference between Gaza and Hezbollah. And when we try to make those corollaries, we make mistakes. Hezbollah is a real army, where Hamas had military-like capabilities, but it's mostly a terror organization. And Israel's ability to control all of the entry points into Gaza is something that we can do. We cannot do this in Lebanon. There are various differences. In Lebanon, there is a different government they can negotiate with. There is no such thing in Gaza. And those differences need to be taken into account when we craft strategy.
Okay, one last question before I ask you again the question about the flotilla. I've read a report that in Lebanon, if the negotiations with Israel continue, Hezbollah might even decide to actually assassinate or intimidate Lebanese government officials. This is essentially sort of a civil war starting there. Do you see this as likely?
Well, this wouldn't be the first time. Hezbollah assassinated Rafiq al-Hariri, not because of engagement with Israel, just because he was more forceful in limiting their will to use Lebanese resources at their own will. So this won't be new. And I'm sure that President On and Prime Minister Salam and others are taking this into account, and so they should, because this is very, very dangerous. And the Lebanese armed forces, uh, I think it will be likely to believe that not all of its officers and soldiers have complete loyalty to the government of Lebanon, given the fact that Hezbollah pays its operatives twice as much as the salaries in the LAF. It is likely or possible that it's also infiltrated by pro-Hezbollah soldiers and officers. So everything is very, very delicate in Lebanon. And I think that the General On, or President On, he knows this mess for a long period of time. He was commander of the LAF. He's been there for so long. I think, and I will say this very directly. I think he's a very brave man. I think leading Lebanon at this point, becoming a president of Lebanon in those circumstances as he did, and moving the charge ahead, this is something to be commended. And this is why I would want this opportunity to materialize. I would want to make sure that we use this opportunity. And if there is a possibility to reach an agreement with the Lebanese government and to enforce and empower them to be able to free Lebanon from Hezbollah's influence. They shouldn't do this because it's good for Israel. They should do this because it's good for the Lebanese. And the fact that Hezbollah is against it and threatening them should not come as a surprise. I hope there is a solution to it. I definitely hope that Lebanon does not go down into a civil war again. This won't be good for anyone, definitely not for the Lebanese, and I don't wish this for the Lebanese. I wish for the removal of the radical Shiites from their positions of power, and Hezbollah from being able to terrorize both the Lebanese and our civilians. And I hope that's doable in a negotiated way. We'll see. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Okay, thank you very much for this. My last question is about the flotilla. I'm not sure actually you'll be able to answer all of it. Let me read it to you. There's a lot of information about the operation regarding the flotilla that we still don't know. Why they, meaning the Israeli army, decided to stop just less than a half of the float. Are the boats being towed toward Israel along with the arrested? How long will it take? And what's the plan in case the rest of the flotilla will keep moving towards the Israeli waters?
I don't know the answer to all of those elements. What I read in the media is that the ships are not being towed to Israel, and only those who have been detained. As I understand, we've detained mostly from the bigger ships. Without crews on those ships, the rest of the flotilla cannot continue the travel of the, I don't know, 1,000 kilometers or whatever the distance from our shores are. And I think that, as you said before, Prime Minister Maloney and others are also supporting Israel in this demand of the people to stop this nonsense and madness and to go home, which I hope will happen. I don't know if they try to continue to move towards Israel. I guess we will need to stop them in other means. And if a new flotilla will start from Turkey, as I've read today in the media, with smaller boats and ships, then we will need to stop them as well, because this is Israel's territorial water and no one should get into it without permission. There are rules and laws in the world. But I have to say, I'm fed from what I see in the media. I don't have more details than that.
Okay, thank you very much. Just to add, as far as I know from reports, that the ships were boarded only after they also tried to oppose a siege on an Israeli sim tanker that was leaving Israel with exports. So this was not taken in a vacuum.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your time, Dr. Hulata, and
You're
for discussing
welcome.
all these disparate subjects. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Okay. So this will be on our YouTube channel later this evening, maybe tomorrow morning. I would like to thank my colleague, Ali Naor, and the journalist for the time. Thank you for attending this briefing. Bye-bye.